Disassembly and assembly of the Mobius Trimmer M108 is easy and requires no tools. Follow along in this step-by-step video as we show you how it's done. First, make sure that the M108 is unplugged. Then, you want to lock all 4 casters in place. Next, remove the screens. You might have to remove a small set screw underneath, depending on your model. Then, simply pop them out. Squeeze inward and lift to open the lid. Then, pop out the tumbler brush by pulling it towards you. Next up, the blade cartridges. Remove the bed knives and spacer bars first to access the helical blades underneath. Remember, the blade cartridges aren't bolted in. You just lift them out and set them aside. For these components especially, we always recommend a rack or shelf system for transport and storage, rather than setting them on a concrete floor. Next up, we'll remove the air thread tension tumbler. Depress the center of the Schrader valve to release air from the pistons. Here's an important tip that will make this much easier. While you're depressing the center of the Schrader valve, push in on the center of the tumbler to ensure that all of the air has been removed from the piston. Next, you'll remove the blue tumbler retaining rings. The easiest way is to hold the tumbler stationary with your fingers on the inside while rotating the tumbler retaining ring with your thumbs. Then, just slide the tumbler straight out towards you. Next, remove the fan housing filter bag. Then, unplug the trim tote sensor from the M108 body. This is easy to overlook, so don't forget. Push down on the trim tote bracket arms and slide out the trim tote. Make sure the trim tote sensor wire is out of the way. Press down on the separator arm and slowly pull the separator towards you. When you see an opening between the M108 body and the separator, get a good grip and remove the separator the rest of the way. The fan housing sits on 2 rails. Simply slide away from the M108 body. So that's it, a complete disassembly of the Mobius Trimmer M108. Now, we'll reverse the process to reassemble the unit. Notice the holes on the top of the fan housing assembly. These correspond to the rails on the bottom of the unit. Simply slide the fan housing back into place on these rails. The separator has guide rails on the side. Keep a good grip until just before your hand is going to get pinched. At that point, you'll know that the guide rails are taking the weight of the separator. Lift up on the separator lever to lock it into place. Next, you'll slide the trim tote back into place on the separator. A good tip here, brace the trim tote with your knee while you pull up on the levers to lock it into place. Plug in the trim tote sensor wire to the body of the M108. Take a note, the plug is not omnidirectional. Next, we'll install the air thread tension tumbler. The smooth end goes in first. Slide the tumbler through the lid. The small fin on the end of the tumbler will fit just under the Schrader valve. Replace the first blue tumbler retaining ring. A tip, pull the tumbler towards you with your fingers on the inside while rotating the bracket with your thumbs. Double check that the tumbler cable is as straight as possible before putting on the second tumbler retaining ring. Attach your pump to the Schrader valve. Give it 2 or 3 pumps, then rotate the tumbler back and forth 2 to 3 times. This will help ensure that the bearings run smoothly. Now, inflate the air thread tension tumbler to 120 psi. The next step is replacing the blade cartridges. Start with the helical blades. The gear side of the helical blades will fit the gear side of the machine. Make sure they are seated properly. Then, you'll replace the bed knives and spacer bars. Each one has a pin on one side that will only allow them to be installed in one direction. Remember, there are no bolts required and no adjustments necessary. Next, snap the tumbler brush back into place and close the lid. Pop the screens back on to the front and back of the M108. And that's it, a complete disassembly and assembly top to bottom.